guys, and welcome to another episode of the Muay Diaz Combat Pubcast. It's Thursday, February 5th, and I'm going to do a little boxing recap of some news that came out and some fights that were announced and just some news that's happened in the last couple of days. Today, Conor Benn was on Showbiz The Adults podcast. Shout out to Showbiz. Love his channel. He did a one-on-one interview with Conor Benn. You know, just talking about what's next for him, what he thought about the Shakur Teofimo fight. And I think he broke. I wasn't sure if he was supposed to announce it because he was kind of looking over. And Showbiz was like, oh, are you breaking news? So he said right now they are in the works for him and Rollie's for possibly May or June, I believe. And that's a fight that I went over a couple episodes ago after the Shakur Teofimo breakdown and what was going to happen at 147. I know Shakur is at 140, but, you know, of course, after Shakur won the beautiful performance against Teofimo, he called out Conor Benn. You know, Conor Benn's calling him, little man, I'm too big for you, and all this and that. I love Conor Benn, man. I love the way he fights. He's just got that dog, and he is all action all the time. And, you know, he made a lot of good points in that interview. He said, you know, this is the boxing business, but at the end of the day, it's also entertainment. You know, people pay their hard-earned money to watch guys fight, and they don't want to watch guys, you know, run around the ring and, you know, not engage, you know, which that's not necessarily what boxing is. You know, the art of boxing is hit and not get hit. Shakur is amazing at that. Floyd was amazing at that. So many other guys. Bud Crawford is amazing at that. But Conor Benn brings that hard-nosed style. You know, he said some of his favorite fighters, you know, Diego Corrales, Arturo Gatti, Mickey Ward, you know, these guys that go in there just looking to fucking knock people out. But yeah, he did say that the Rollie's fight is in works, and either he'll do Rollie's and then Ryan, or Ryan, the winner of Ryan Barrios, or he said what he wants to do is fight Rollie's first and then get the winner of Garcia Barrios, possibly September, which would be around Mexican Independence Day, which would be huge if it is Barrios or Ryan Garcia, seeing as they're both Mexican Americans. And of course, September, as we all know, Mexican Independence Weekend, so it's always a big weekend for boxing. Yeah, man, Conor Benn, I love Conor Benn. You know, I think Conor Benn and Eubank Jr. too is probably the most coverage I've done on a fight since I started this channel because of the history. You know, I recapped the entire first fight. I previewed the second fight. I went over every single press conference. I even prefaced the history between their fathers of Eubank Sr. and Nigel Benn. Like, that was just a huge, huge fight. Not just for boxing, but especially for English boxing and the history that it holds over there. It was a great, spectacular night of fights. That entire card was Conor Benn, Eubank too. So I'm glad that Conor Benn's going to come to the States now, and he says he wants to smoke. He goes, they can all get it. He goes, Rollie's can get it. Ryan or Mario can get it. He goes, if Shakur comes up, he can get it. He goes, Devin Haney is a track star. He don't want the smoke, but if he wants it, he can get it. I mean, there's so many good matchups at 47 for him, for Conor Benn, and I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, that's it on Conor Benn. Shout out to Showbiz, man. That was a great interview. It was like a 20-minute interview, but it was great the whole way through. The next bit of news, Shakur getting stripped by the WBC. And I saw a couple of videos yesterday, and it's kind of frustrating seeing people put out the videos, and like Shakur got stripped just 3 days after, you know, his big win against Teofimo, and, you know, they're hating on him. And I went to the comments, and it's all like, oh, they're racist. It's because he's a black fighter, and they don't want him to be the champion. I'm in so many boxing forums on Facebook, Instagram, and stuff like that. And for whatever reason, it always comes down to race. And listen, I love boxing, and I don't care if you're black, white, purple, yellow, brown, red. Good boxing is good boxing, and to me, I don't understand it. I know it gets personal sometimes when it's country versus country, or, Mexican fighters versus Puerto Rican fighters, Mexican fighters versus black fighters, white fighters versus black fighters. People can get edgy, right? But it's not you in the ring at the end of the day. So I don't understand why it's such a big deal. Like, unless you're in there putting it on the line, just relax, man, and enjoy the fights, And the thing with Shakur, and this is why it's so hard for me to explain. I think he came out and he was kind of salty about it too. He said that they were trying to punish him because of what happened with Bud and not wanting to pay the sanctioning fees to the WBC. And Mauricio Suleiman, who is the president of the WBC, was actually on Ariel Helwani's show 2 days ago, which I watched the full interview. It was about an hour long. He kind of went into details on why they charge what they do and all that. I don't agree with everything he said, but the sanctioning bodies do a lot to bring up fighters with the multiple titles that they have. I don't necessarily agree with all those titles, but I understand the process of building fighters up and giving them intercontinental titles or interim titles or franchise tag titles and stuff like that. I don't necessarily agree with all of that, but I understand the thought behind the process of it all. But the biggest thing with the Shakur being stripped of his title, that was his lightweight title at 135 pounds, guys. He just fought and beat Teofimo for the WBO in the Ring magazine at 140 pounds. Junior welterweight, 140 pounds. He's no longer at 135. And if he's not going to be at 135 pounds, the sanctioning bodies need to free up that title so that somebody else can fight for that title. I don't see Shakur going back down to 35. He did so well at 40. He looked good at the weight. Why would you go back down? Why would you kill yourself trying to cut that weight if you already looked good at 40? I think he'd even look better at 47. So it's our business, guys. I mean, I know we want to be boxing purists, but at the end of the day, boxing is also a business. And these sanctioning bodies want to free up those titles. If he's at another weight class, why are you going to have him hold up a title at the weight class that he left? Either he was going to relinquish it or they're going to strip him. Let somebody else fight for that title. He's already moved on to 40. I don't think it was anything personal. I don't think it was because he's a black fighter. It's because it's business. And the way it came off, him being stripped a few days after he won the title might look shady. And maybe it was a little bit shady that they did it so quickly, But at the end of the day, he's going to move on to bigger, better things. He doesn't need to hold on to that 135-pound title at lightweight anymore. He's already at junior welterweight at 140, and he's going to have multiple times to either catch another belt at 40 or go to 47. He defended the 35-pound title 3 times already. He doesn't need to hold on to it. He's already moved on to a different weight. So that's just the business of boxing, guys. I don't think it was anything about race. Maybe they were a little bit salty because he is Crawford's boy, but it doesn't change the fact that he wasn't going to go down to 35, back down. I don't believe he was. Unless he comes out and says, I was going to plan to go back down to 35 and defend that title again and then move back up to 40 to catch another title at 140, then I'll believe him. But until he comes out and says that, it's just business as usual, guys. How many times, Alexander Usyk, after he reunified it, undisputed again, like a week later, the IBF stripped him. And then that's why Daniel Dubois fought for the title. That's why the guy right now, I can't remember his name, Jesus Christ. That's why there's another IBF champion at the heavyweight division, because it was like maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks after Usyk reunified and became undisputed again, they stripped him again. That's just the way boxing works, guys. I mean, I know you guys you're passionate and you want to think a certain way, but that's just not how it is, man. Maybe there was a little bit of saltiness in there. I don't know for sure. I'm not going to stipulate or, I'm not going to go out there and start accusing why they did things, but that's just boxing, guys. Titles move around constantly, and, they got to free up those titles. If you've moved to another division, they got to free up that title for someone else to fight for it. The last thing I want to go over for this boxing podcast, Deontay Wilder versus Chisora. It's going to take place in April, Easter weekend. I think this is a great fight for both guys. It's a perfect opponent. Wilder said himself, and Chisora is not going to move around the ring. He's going to tuck his chin down. He's going to try to put his forehead in his chest, and he's going to try to knock Deontay Wilder out. And that's the exact type of opponent Deontay Wilder needs at this point in his career. He desperately needs a win. And if somebody like Chisora is going to come to him, that's perfect for Wilder. You know, it's a perfect fight for him. I watched the press conference. Both guys are up there. They're friends. You know, they're being pretty chummy with each other, which is good to see, man. You don't always need to talk shit and be over the top to sell a fight. We all know what we're going to get with this fight. It's going to be fireworks. Somebody's going to get knocked out. I truly believe that. So you don't need to do that extra bullshit to sell this fight. I'm not sure. I think it's going to be in England. So that's going to be great for Wilder to get over there in front of the English public, you know, especially after the losses to Tyson Fury, to come back, you know, and put on a great performance against an English fighter in Chisora. But then I saw the show that both of them did, Talk Sport Boxing, and Deontay exploded on Simon Jordan, the host, which I don't blame him. I think Simon Jordan is a smug, snarky son of a bitch. I've said it before. The English media can be some of the shittiest, snarkiest fucking people in the world when it comes to media and paparazzi and all that. He was being really short with Deontay in his answers, quick to cut him off as soon as he was done talking, just trying to move the conversation to the next thing. And then what set Deontay off was he brought up Tyson Fury. And as soon as he said his name, Deontay was like, we ain't going to talk about him. We're going to move on. And Simon Jordan should have took that and be like, okay, well, let's move on. But he kept pushing, trying to get to this narrative between him and Tyson Fury. And Deontay absolutely lost his shit. And he was like, he said that he was the biggest cheat in the heavyweight boxing, that he had proof that he was a cheater. He shouldn't have lost those 2 fights. And Simon Jordan was trying to, you know, he was still being smug about it, but he was trying to ask him why he was reacting that way because he did lose those fights. And then Deontay went on to say, why is it so hard for you to believe a black man over a white man? He goes, I'm from the South. You don't know how it is for us down there. Y'all don't, you know, if y'all don't know how that shit is here in this country, I'm going to let y'all know. And, you know, I love that Deontay gets passionate about that. You know, I'm passionate about my culture and where I come from. And Deontay is very passionate about being a black man who was raised in the South, which, man, I'm a person of color, and I can only imagine what Deontay Wilder had to go through growing up in the South. You know, I've had my own interactions, you know, not so much here in Texas, but when I go visit family in the Midwest and Indiana, I've had some not so pleasant interactions with some, you know, pale-skinned brothers up there. But it is what it is. You know, you can't fix ignorance. You know, some people are just going to be ignorant no matter where you go. But you could tell that Deontay is passionate about that. And it really got him pissed off. And he stormed off the interview and really got really hot against Simon Jordan. Like, he started closing the distance, walking across this, you know, where they were at by the desk, where the security had to get between them and kind of usher him off. So I understand why he got upset. You know, he took it personal, you know, and he believed that it was racially driven. The only thing I'm going to say about that, because he has the right to feel however he wants about the situation, but he said he had proof that Tyson Fury cheated. And he said that wait till my documentary comes out and I'm going to expose everyone. The only issue I have with that is that if I knew someone cheated and beat me twice, I would not be sitting back and being okay with it and watching Tyson Fury to go on to fight for the undisputed title against Alexander Usyk 2 times. I wouldn't sit back and just be okay with that. I would bring the proof to the sanctioning bodies, to the Commission of Boxing, and get those losses overturned. I'd be burning the world down to try to get those losses overturned, because if I thought that I got cheated by someone who cheated in those fights, I would not be sitting back and just being like, oh, just wait till my documentary came out. You know, he said, I think it was the second fight, he said that his water was spiked. I don't know if that's true. I'm not calling him a liar, but I mean, I'd like to see the proof. Simon Jordan said, you said that your costume was too heavy. And he said, I never said that. But I've seen interviews where he said that that was the case, that his legs were done by the time he got to the ring because the costume was too heavy in the second fight. Okay? Let's just say he didn't say that. All right. And then he said that they had taken padding out of the fight in the third fight, second and the third fight. You know, and that's why he was getting hurt and getting knocked out. And then the clip that they always point to is the one where Fury's flipping that jab out and you can see the glove kind of contour out. Listen, guys, I don't know how many of you guys actually fought and worn gloves. I've been wearing boxing gloves since I was 10, 12 years old, you know, being in the gym. And I'm just telling you my personal experience. I'm not saying Deontay is a liar, and I'm not saying that he's wrong. I'm just saying, depending on the type of glove you have, you know, whether it's foam or especially the Mexican style gloves with the horsehair in it. I've worn both, especially with the horsehair ones. Once you start sweating into that glove and that horsehair starts absorbing that moisture, you can feel your knuckles starting to pierce through that horsehair. You know, I'll wear those gloves and I'll maybe get 5 or 6 rounds on the bag before it starts to hurt because I can feel just knuckle piercing through that horsehair. And now it's just knuckle, leather, and bag, right? So those will get flimsy. You know, I have the Reyes gloves. I can open my fingers and extend that glove where it gets that crease on the back side where it looked when Tyson was flipping that jab. And that's another thing. He wasn't closing his fist when he was shooting that jab. He was flipping that jab and extending his fingers, right, to set up that big right hand. You know, that was just kind of like a feeler kind of to get Deontay's eyes off the big right hand. And look at the jab, boom, straight right. Now the foam gloves are a little bit harder to extend and open like that because that foam is naturally curved. But even the foam, once it gets saturated with the moisture from your sweat, it gets more flimsy. It doesn't hold the same shape. It's easier to open your fingers and be able to extend to parry and catch punches when you open it up or to flip it out like that. That's just my personal experience. And I've had different gloves, different sizes, different weight of gloves, horsehair gloves, the Mexican style gloves, foam, gel gloves. I've had them all. As you open them up and get into a fight and you start to sweat in there, those gloves get more loose, that heat expands that leather, and whatever's in whatever the filler is, whether it's the horsehair or the foam, you know, it does get more, it's more pliable, right? It's not going to just be, your hands aren't going to stay curved in there. You'll be able to open your fingers and extend that glove, right? So, that's just my experience. And if it was something as serious as tampering with the gloves in a heavyweight bout, I'd be up in arms. I wouldn't be sitting back. I'm not calling him a liar. I'm just saying that wouldn't be me, because there's been, you know, 2 times for sure where you've seen this happen. You know, one of them, most people know, that was recently in the 2000s with the Antonio Margarito versus Miguel Cotto situation, their first fight, where Margarito's hand wraps, allegedly still, I don't know if it's ever been proven. It might have, but I'd have to relook at it. But the hand wraps that his trainer used, you know, were put on dry, but once they got saturated with the sweat, that they started to harden. So there might have been like some chemical that they were dipped in that when they got wet, they started to harden like plaster. That's the first example of glove tampering. And that wasn't even glove tampering. That's just wrap tampering, you know. So there's all kinds of different ways you can get around it. But the biggest one was back in 1983, Luis Resto versus Billy Collins Jr. And Luis Resto was never known to be a big puncher. And he beat Billy Collins Jr. black and blue in that fight. I think he ended up like tearing his iris or ripping an iris in his eye, fracturing multiple bones in his face. And it was immediately after the fight, or even in that fight, Billy Collins was so tough, he wouldn't go down. And Luis Resto's coach, Panama Lewis, who's known and was banned for years, just kept telling him, just keep hitting him. Just keep hitting him. He's going to go down. That's because he knew he had tampered with the gloves. He had removed, I think it was like an inch of foam out of each glove. And the only reason Luis Resto got caught was after the fight, Billy Collins Jr.'s father, who was his trainer, had never seen his son take a beating like that, especially from a guy who was not supposed to be a big puncher. And after that fight, after they had announced Luis Resto the winner, or even before, Billy Collins Jr.'s father went over there to shake Luis Resto's hand. And when he did, he grabbed the glove of Luis Resto. And he felt that it was flimsier than it should have been. And after that, he immediately sparked an investigation. Luis Resto ended up going to prison for 2 years for an assault. Panama Lewis was banned. I don't remember for how long. I think he might have been banned for life to work a corner. And then, unfortunately, Billy Collins Jr. just never recovered from that beating. And I believe he ended up killing himself in a drunk driving accident a year or 2 years after, which is so unfortunate, because he did take a bad beating in that fight, and it was just horrible to watch. But I said that because if there was glove tampering, I would not be sitting back waiting to release a documentary to expose people. I'd be going after him with everything I had to, one, prove that he is a cheater, two, get those losses overturned, and three, prove to himself that he wasn't a liar, that he wasn't lying about Tyson Fury cheating. So I'm not calling him a liar, but all those things just don't sit right with me, and they don't add up. If you thought that somebody cheated you and cost you those fights, those huge fights, I wouldn't just be sitting back and taking it that easy like he has been doing. So that's my take on the boxing. I'm going to do another episode to go over the UFC Fight Night here. But thank you guys so much again for watching. Hit the like, hit the subscribe, hit the bell so you get the notifications. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.